To Donald Trump's trade war now, and China has called on the United States to cancel all tariffs after Washington announced exemptions for some consumer electronics. In a statement, Beijing's Commerce Ministry called the exemptions a small step, but urged the U.S. to return to a path of mutual respect and to correct what it called Washington's mistakes. On Saturday, Chinese import tariffs of 125% on American goods took effect in retaliation for Trump's 145% levy on Chinese imports to the United States. So let's speak now to Veena Najibullah, the Vice President for Research and Strategy at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, joining us today from Montreal. So President Trump here exempting some electronic goods from the tariffs imposed on imports from China. How much of a climb down do you see this as?
Yes, good morning. This is definitely a concession, but it's a concession largely made to U.S. Tech companies who have been pressuring President Trump for exemptions. So the big winners here are, of course, Apple, Nvidia, Dell, and other companies. This is a slight de-escalation in the trade war on China because about 24% of what U.S. imports from China fall under these categories of electronic goods. And it's also a big win and certainly a cause for relief for most of Southeast Asian economies like Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, that export a lot of electronic goods to the U.S.
Yeah, that is a really important point to include as well. Trump has said that many countries have been calling the White House to try to negotiate over these tariffs. Do you think that he is expecting China to try to do the same?
Absolutely. So President Trump keeps saying that he believes that there will be negotiations, that China wants to negotiate, and is simply trying to find the best way to do that. But I think an important point here is that China of 2025 is not China of 2018. China and President Xi now has a lot more options, and we've seen that not just in being able to meet the tariffs that U.S. is imposing, sort of tit for tat, dollar for dollar, but also to use other tools, export controls, various investigations into U.S. companies, banning of Hollywood movies and so forth. So I think we will see a lot more forceful pushback from China. But of course, at the end of the day, China needs the U.S. market, about $500 billion of exports from China. It's not going to be easy for them to find alternatives. So they will make deals. But the difficulty here is how long would those deals last? Because even on these electronic good exemptions, we are now hearing this morning that maybe they're only going to be in place for 1 or 2 months. So a lot of unpredictability and volatility here.
And what does that unpredictability actually mean for the Chinese market and for its consumers?
Well, it essentially, of course, there will be short-term economic pain. There will be an impact on economic growth in China, but ultimately China will try to continue to find alternative markets, make deals with others. We're already seeing this, a charm offensive with Southeast Asia, with President Xi traveling to Southeast Asia this week, also with Europe in terms of the visiting delegations from Spain and conversations with EU. So it's going to be really difficult for some of these other economies because they would want to continue to have stable and good relations with China. But on the other hand, they want to protect their markets because they don't want to see Chinese products that are not able to come to the U.S. being dumped on their markets and impacting their manufacturing. So we will see moves towards decoupling between U.S. and China. There will be ups and downs, temporary relief, but I think overall direction of travel is that both U.S. and China are trying to decouple and reroute supply chains. That's going to create a lot of uncertainty for others who are trying to negotiate with both superpowers and a lot of unpredictability for the market and for consumers.
And just very, very briefly before I let you go, what do you think we might see this week? I mean, could we see China coming to Trump to try to make some of these deals?
I mean, it's interesting. We've seen China now saying that they're not going to increase the tariffs, that basically the tariffs that they now have in place kind of achieve the goal of essentially creating an embargo on U.S. goods. So I think for this week, we're seeing China prioritizing travel to Southeast Asia. I think they're going to be making sure that their messaging around the world is clear, that China is stable while the U.S. is creating all this uncertainty.
Veena Najibullah, thank you so much for speaking with us on DW.